All right, welcome back to Dinner Television. Bill C-23, a controversial measure that, in theory, suggests that we should be able to improve the speed at which we cross the U.S.-Canadian border. But there's a wrinkle in there that has a lot of people talking. To discuss this on a diversity panel tonight, we're joined by Mustafa, Erick, and Mary. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks. Thank you.
So the wrinkle in question pertains to the ability of American border agents to not only question people who are coming through, but it used to be that if you didn't want to be questioned, you could turn around. Well, now that's no longer the case. We've seen a few examples of this where Canadians have been detained, probed, asked questions, despite the fact that they've simply said we'd rather turn around. So what's your take on this measure? Is this a big deal? Is this something that is an affront to our freedom?
Yeah, I think it is a pretty big deal. I am routinely, stopped at the border and questioned for hours on end, and to have the opportunity to leave removed from me, the right to leave removed from me, would be a pretty significant and scary measure. It would definitely make me think more than twice about going down to the States, period.
I have also been stopped at, just probably because of the color of my skin. I've been stopped many times. Anytime I cross through, probably because of my gold jewelry, it beeps. I'm not just, just checked. They frisk me every single time. It's like, am I what is it that makes them do that? And it's so funny because it's my kids now have a laugh every time because they know that, they're going to stop me and they're going to actually frisk me.
Yeah, I think to me it's death by 1,000 cuts. So it's another one of those steps towards removing people's civil liberties. Our government's job is to protect our rights and freedoms, not negotiate them with other countries and give them up on our behalf.
So let's talk about that, though, because in discussing this publicly, Justin Trudeau has sort of kind of brushed it off, saying that these instances are fairly minor and that in the grand scheme of things, Bill C-23 is a fairly effective measure. Do you think that maybe he needs to show a little bit more backbone in respect to this, that perhaps he needs to go and revisit this with his American counterpart?
I think it's a legacy that has been handed down by the PC government. I mean, it was Stephen Harper and Obama.
Because it was Harper and Obama who struck this deal.
Who signed this. Yeah. So I'm not sure why is it that he's not changing the stance a little bit, or he's saying something a little different, because it doesn't seem like freedom is existing in the situation, like you mentioned. Freedom is being taken away from people so where is the democracy in this whole situation?
Well, yeah. Just the fact that you could be going down to the border, going down to Montana or going down to Disneyland, and then, as a Canadian, you could be put in a room, refuse the right to leave and go back to Canada, and then potentially strip searched under C-23 without, really the right to say, I'm leaving, is kind of terrifying. And it should raise the hackles of all Canadians who are concerned about their, their civil liberties, their rights, and their freedoms. I think it is something that's being pushed through without enough public discussion. Maybe at the end of the day, Canadians feel, okay, this is the right balance we want to strike. But that needs to happen after there's been a public, full conversation about what it means to cross the border.
Backbone seems pretty strong too. I mean, we're a mouse sleeping beside an elephant, right? Yeah. So to stand up and pump out our chest is probably not the most effective way, but I certainly think it needs to be rethought. This isn't going to help us as Canadians. It's taking things away from us, not empowering us. Okay,
but then when you take a look at the broader picture, we talk about C-23, we take a look at the issues that we certainly have had with the travel ban, in particular the first time that the executive order came through. Is there a concern that perhaps this is something that's going to grow, that we're going to see perhaps more measures like this implemented over the next little while that will affect Canadians?
I think so. I mean, we're saying we're giving up things on behalf of our citizens, and so what's the next thing that the government will say? You know what? You can do that to our citizens as well. You can take that away from them. We're willing to negotiate away their rights, and I think it's the beginning of a slope. And you've got a government in the United States that's very keen to implement laws like this one.
I feel that already, it's a trade-off. there have been some gains for Canada through the pipeline and other things, and it feels to me like, you know, it's a trade-off. It's like something you give some, you get some. But this is really sad that it's being negotiated against the freedoms and rights of Canadian people.
And pipeline is the movement of oil and bitumen. It's not the movement of our citizens. It's one thing to stop bitumen and prevent it from moving through the United States. It's an entirely different thing.
Very peculiar
to have
parallel.
us. Yeah.
Do you think it's the tip of the iceberg?
Well, I mean, I think it's just important to think that, like, for Canadians to think about the fact that this is the Canadian government that's putting this into place. It's not, you know, Trump's administration that's doing this. This is not Trump's Muslim ban. We elected our members of parliament, and they have a duty to protect our civil liberties under the Charter. And while Justin Trudeau has talked about the Charter and how C-23 will interact, it's not at all clear how those two things will really come into coexistence together.
So definitely an interesting story, certainly to keep our eyes on, especially as things evolve, not only here but south of the border. We're going to hit pause right now, but